Welcome back. David Hertel in for Elias, who's on paternity leave for the entire month of January. I got some texters' questions this morning, so he'll be back February 5th. He'll be back at the helm of the Elias Makos show. Happy to be filling in for him while he is enjoying fatherhood with young Wolfgang. So, we've been talking a lot about immigration this morning. We discussed it on the Big Five. I took your calls and texts about this. There's a lot to unpack, and it's a complex topic, so let's just jump into it right away with our next guest to get more, let's say, rational, fact-based discussion on what's going on with immigration in Montreal, Quebec, and Canada. Jack Jedwab, president of the Association for Canadian Studies, joins us. Jack, help us, please.
I wish I could. This thing is, of course, complex, and we're not getting all the information that we need to deliberate as thoughtfully as necessary.
This thing is, this thing is really spiraling. So let's try to unpack some of it because there's a lot to unpack. So let's start federally. You have Immigration Minister Mark Miller saying that, immigration seems out of control. Now, I have my thoughts on this topic. I remember we were talking earlier this year, actually, about the situation with federal immigration. How do you see the situation? Let's say, first of all, immigration targets, and then let's talk about asylum seekers, because these are two different things.
Right. It's important to mention that we have what many people will agree is a selective immigration system predominantly. So 60% of our immigration is coming through an economic or skills category that's based on a point system where we select people, ideally, who meet our labor market needs. Then, of course, we've got another 25% or so of persons who are coming through what we call family reunification, right? So people who are family members, the people coming through that economic stream. And then we've got the balance, which for the most part are refugees, some through the Geneva Convention obligations we have, and others through the asylum process. Right? That's sort of so we need to keep that in mind. We went through a pandemic where we saw a diminishing of our immigration projections. We're a country that wanted to grow itself quite rapidly to meet some of our demographic challenges because we've got a low birth rate, so we needed to replace our labor force. We thought we could do that through immigration. But what's happening is that we've also got some economic challenges that are arising as all this, all these objectives have been laid out for us, which are medium to longer term objectives. And there's a big housing crisis. And now economists are saying we don't have the housing stock to meet this number of persons arriving here. There's a question underlying that about whether it's just availability only or affordability. Because actually, when I lived downtown this past summer for a few months, and there's so much stuff for rent downtown, it's crazy. But the prices are really high.
Right.
So the optics of it look like, hey, wait a second. Anecdotally, there is a lot of stuff for rent out there. It's just really pricey for people coming here who may not be able to afford it. So it's a combination of availability and affordability. One last point. A lot of the immigration numbers that got pushed by the federal government to those levels at 500,000 were a function of consultations they did where industry very heavily supported those increases because they said they had a lack of people that they needed to fill all kinds of jobs in what was a transitioning economy coming out of the pandemic. So there are a lot of elements here that require a more holistic picture of this thing.
So we're hearing a lot of linkage between the housing situation, the cost of housing, the availability of housing, the affordability of housing, and also the situation in healthcare, the situation in education. We're tying it into those very high levels of immigration that the federal government is allowing, and that also because of the high number of asylum seekers coming in, 60,000 last year through Quebec alone. That's a slippery slope, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. Again, we need to have more transparency about some of these issues in terms of enabling the public to thoughtfully deliberate about this, because even in Quebec, where I appreciate that our premier has now issued a letter this week. Obviously, there's a political dimension to that. Could have picked up the phone, by the way. Hey, Justin, what's up? But no, okay. So we do the letter thing, and
I did the letter thing when I was immigration minister.
Yeah,
I did the same letter.
Yeah, no, I understand that. If hey, by the way, if it's me and you've got an issue, please pick up the phone.
I will. I won't send you a letter and give it to the media before. No.
But even in Quebec, there have been these contradictions in terms of policies, because Quebec, under Premier Legault, who was, definitely built some political capital on reducing immigration, which he did very gingerly, right? It wasn't a massive immigration decline, but made up for it with those temporary workers, where industry, again, put pressure on the Premier and on the government saying, we need people because we've got jobs we can't fill. So industry needed to play and still needs to play a more important role in this conversation in terms of what their needs are. And if housing is indeed the challenge it is, industry needs to be more involved in that conversation with the various organizations providing the services and with policymakers, because we're not hearing a lot from industry. Suddenly, in the last 2 weeks, we're hearing a lot from economists. I'm not challenging their forecasts, but again, the contradiction was that during the consultations the government did about those levels, industry was out there saying we need people.
Well, why? I mean, the issue is, it's putting a pressure on housing, but we needed the people, and we're bringing in the people. That, by the way, all the Quebec major economic lobbies are still saying we need more immigration. So they haven't changed their tune. It's about governments maybe not responding soon enough on the housing issue.
No, I agree. And it's funny because to a very significant degree, a lot of the same industry people, including the banks, are the ones whose economists are now coming out with these very worrisome forecasts about what they're calling the demographic trap. But there is a demographic issue out there. We're not the only country that's encountering those demographic issues. And we need to think more carefully instead of thinking in a knee-jerk way about making these changes. The whole issue now suddenly about international students, which the Prime Minister raised at the Chamber of Commerce, I guess it was a couple of days ago. Well, there's some issues about international students. So the universities are also encountering some financial challenges disproportionately. In Quebec, in particular, the English language universities are encountering some challenges. They want to make up for their sort of economic concerns with more international students who pay those higher tuition fees, and now suddenly international students are the problem. There's definitely a need to think this thing through a bit more carefully and make sure your messaging is aligned with what's really going on out there. But I think, a lot of politics can be played out, and they'll be played out in the next election on this issue.
Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon announced yesterday that he wants immigration levels down to 35,000 a year. I have about a minute left, Jack. What's your response to that?
Well, again, is he going to make up for it with temporary migrants? I can't tell, because now he's talking about asylum seekers being an issue, but he's the one who massively boosted up the temporary workers because industry was telling him they needed workers, and he kind of said, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, for domestic consumption, I'm going to lower immigration levels because we've got all these concerns, not only economic, but about the French language. But for industry, I'm going to get you more temporary workers. We've got to have some more transparency and better reconcile these things and try to stop playing politics. I know that's a big request here, probably too big. But we need to have more transparency and a broader conversation about this issue.
I agree. And even with Mark Miller's comments, federally speaking, I mean, on the federal side, we've had 3 immigration ministers since 2021. And now we're going into probably an election year, either by the end of this year or certainly in 25. So how can we hope that the immigration system federally will finally be modernized?
Well, we'll have to, again, have those discussions, including cross-government, not just sort of, and the federal government did consult the provinces, but we'll have to have another one of these conversations. Well, right now, it's the theater of politics that's being played out. We've gone from Sean Fraser to Mark Miller, who's got a very different message than Sean Fraser did.
Oh, yeah.
Having said that, like he seems like a decent guy. His dad, by the way, Carmen, was my prophet, McGill, so he's got to be okay. But he needs more clear messaging, Minister Miller. In terms of what the direction is from the federal government right now, instead of crisis management, which is what we're going through. 12 months or plus prior to an election.
Always great to get your insights, Jack. Appreciate your time.
No problem, David. You take care.
You too. Jack Jedwab, president of the Association for Canadian Studies.